and you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and/or question?
Hi, Ben. It's Tim from Denver. Just want to comment on what Solomon's doing, great work there. And it's really important that we start looking at ballots from the bottom up, because the local races are where changes can be affected.
Yeah.
First, and also the policies that go into effect are going to affect you the most directly.
All right.
So,
cool.
Also, I kicked Solomon a DM on Twitter. He was saying he needed volunteers, so just want to let him know.
All right, Solomon, you got his, Solomon, you guys, hit him up on Twitter, and you guys can connect offline to get that volunteerism going.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
Thanks. We need as many volunteers as possible. So thanks a lot. We're working on 2.0. We're planning on expanding a lot. So not just progressive candidates, but literally every candidate running for Congress everywhere. That's it. And what their issues are, who's funding them, what their ideological scores are for different groups, if unions are endorsing them, if people like Move On have endorsed them, the Working Families Party, all the information you could need kind of condensed into quick bits, so that if there isn't a true progressive candidate, if there's anyone close in your district, or if you can push them, or if there's no Democrat running in your district, finding someone who can run, that kind of thing.
Thanks so much for the call, man. Nick, you wanted to actually chime in there.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we say focus on the local races, but with the way local government is set up, not being able to run deficits and things of that nature, it's really hard to try to do progressive things while you're under an overarching system from the federal and state level that counteracts kind of what you do. Like the federal government has a progressive tax structure, but many states have a regressive tax structure, and you'll see in those states it like completely undoes itself. So it really has to be an alignment from top to bottom. But the actual federal stuff is actually more important because it sets the structure by which the state and municipalities can operate. Specifically in terms of like minimum wage and all that kind of things. Those kind of things are set first at the federal level. Now the state can go beyond that, but it's an uphill battle, especially if your state is not inclined to be progressive from the beginning. To begin with.
What do you guys think about that? I mean, that's counterintuitive to everything that you not counterintuitive, intuitive, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think it has to be a both and instead of an either or. Like, of course, you have to stay on top of what's going on the federal level, but we can't just do federal and then say we're going to come back to this other thing. Because I agree with the caller that the day-to-day, the school board issues, issues in terms of our local prosecutors, like the issues we're having with prosecutors not being, not addressing police killings, that's not going to be addressed at the federal level. That's a local county level issue in most places. So I do think that I absolutely agree with Nick that it does set the tone, that the federal, because you have people who say, oh, well, vote, it doesn't matter, the federal government, none of that matters, but it does matter. I do agree with Nick. It does set the tone. Like issues of the Voting Rights Act, for example, right? That's an issue on the top level that we should not have allowed to lapse the way it did, but it did. So we have to have both and I know a lot of us work and we're busy with regular life, but we're going to have to make the time to address these issues. We're going to have to make the time to get involved in our local school board issues and stuff like that. We're going to have to make the time to get involved and see what's going on in our local city councils, what's going on in our state races, because when you look at voter turnout for our state and local races, that's even more abysmal than when you look at national races, right? So fewer people are involved in the process at the local and state level, and we do need more people getting involved. At the same time, we can't let up on the federal issue. It's just a lot of work and engagement that needs to be done across the board. Yeah. And I think initiatives like what Solomon's talking about doing, what other people, like some of the examples that Christy Matthews and Stacy gave us, previously, help people. If we can streamline the information for people so they can figure out where they can get in and fit in, I think that really helps people as well.
That's the other thing. Not only where can they get in, but to please get in and get involved. I think there's a level of engagement that we slept. Like we were we were complacent, and there's a level of engagement that we just have not had over the last 8 years. Well, actually, that's not entirely fair. You've had movements over the last 8 years, which we could tip our hats to for changing the national conversation. But in terms of that consistent political engagement to actually change things, whether it be on the federal level or on the local level, we just really haven't had it. And so I'm hoping that with sites like with what you're doing, Solomon, and with like stuff that Christy Matthews is doing, and even what we're doing here at the Progressive Army, that the engagement and that consistent engagement will increase.
We'd love to do like state houses and mayoral candidates and
no pressure.
and school boards. If we had a team of about 80 volunteers, that would be totally doable. As opposed to about 4, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, but I mean, but the point, the point
I'm saying, like, I want to add DeRay to our list as well, but that would mean adding a whole category of going through every mayoral candidate, and like going through just Congress has almost killed me.
So, okay, we're going to talk about that complicated issue a little bit later. I started to talk about it, but I'll talk about it later. But I think I agree with you, Noah, that it has to be a both and, particularly on some other issues that are just, for instance, abortion, right? Certain states, you got to drive 50 miles, 60 miles, 100 miles to get those services.
But let me talk to you, Ben. You see what you're doing here, right?
Yeah, what am I? Well, no, but...
No.
Go ahead. Let me see what you're doing.
Okay. So now all the examples you've brought up have been excellent social examples.
Mm-hmm.
But at the economic level, it's not so clear cut.
Well, no,
Where are
it's
you going to get those funds from?
That's why it still has to be a both.
That was the other thing. I don't think we could fund reliably. We don't the progressive funding base without corporate ties. I don't know if we could fund congressional races.
I'm not even talking about that. I'm saying even if we won the election, how would the city actually get the funds and the resources it needs to actually do the things that we would need it to do? Because the population is already overtaxed.
We have to go by issue and see where the funding has historically come from. I mean, there's not only federal funding, but there's also there's local funding. These entities actually existed prior to some of them being shut down. But to go to your bigger point, whether it's a social issue or whether it's an economic issue, yes, the economic issues. The entire conversation on economics is actually a global paradigm that we can actually affect from the national level, because we're the greatest economy, for a little while longer in the world. But then there are the local issues that really affect people socially. We can't neglect those. I just don't say put those over your decision economically. I say both and.
I'm not saying one before the other, but what I'm saying is the victory, to really be able to push that movement home, we really are going to need a victory at the federal level. We need some things at the federal level to change such that those other victories at the state and local levels are a lot more possible, if that means anything. Funding will be a lot easier if the wage floor is higher. If the wage floor is higher from which you have to raise funds, it will be a lot easier for cities to fund programs.
Well,
and states to fund things as well.
It's easier for them to fund programs if they're willing to do the programs in the first place. And what I'm saying is that if our lack of engagement over that, so let's go under the premise that we're not dealing with half or even a fraction of the economic base that we could have. Let's go underneath that premise. We still had the ability to do certain things. Our lack of engagement on the state level has opened up the Republican Party to just run amok in every category across the board, so that whatever we could have done has just not been done whatsoever, has been gutted and has been sent. Those funds have been allocated somewhere else. So what I'm saying is you're absolutely right in the economic sense, talking about the economic base and our ability to do any of these programs we're talking about. What I'm saying is even if we increase that economic base on the federal level and we have Republicans running, not just Republicans, blue dog Democrats running these state houses, then we're not going to have any. The money is going to bottleneck, and it will not go to programs that are needed. So it's got to be a both and, in my opinion.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying I don't see a path forward on one without the other. That was my point.
path
And
forward.
I'm saying, to be honest with you, the limiting factor won't be winning elections at the local level. You can do that with people, but once they actually are in there, the reality of them being in there, not having the resources to implement that based on the economic conditions that the constituents are in, and the limitations of that regional area will be different.
And to that end, I think we're arguing a mute point because I just don't see the political engagement existing on the local level and not being applied on the federal level as well. I mean, if you start a progressive movement locally, they're going to vote progressive up ballot just like we would expect them to vote progressive down ballot. So if I get, if I change Massachusetts to actually be progressive rather than this blue dog neoliberalism that exists here, that's going to reverberate going up as well. So I think it goes both ways. I'm trying to find a list of names, guys. Go ahead, jump in there. Anybody? I'm
See,
trying to find this.
I was kind of going to argue. The same issue again. Like, we have places that are more progressive or so-called progressive just by being, blue or what. Well, I guess I can't say that. I could say we have places where supposedly it's supposed to be progressive, but you see neoliberalism running wild, and it's just because of the nature of the structure of state and local government. The way they're structured doesn't lend themselves to progressive politics as much.
Go ahead.
With them not
on that.
with them not being able to hold deficits and whatnot.
Oh, man, but if we're looking to, boy, you talking about a structural change out of this world. Are you seriously suggesting? I see the benefit, but how would you go about allowing not local, but state level governments to run a deficit? What would be your plan there?
No, my plan would be to raise the floor, the wage floor, raise the wage floor uniformly across the entire country at the same time, such that you would have a higher wage floor to be able to pay the taxes to be able to accommodate the programs.
Oh, bro, I thought you were talking about just a structure where states...
No, states can actually, do bonds and things of that nature. So that's not the issue. The issue is actually getting the support for that, and people are less supportive of that because they don't want to pay for it because they don't have the means. A lot of people are struggling, or they see the state has too much money.